Welcome back to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We are your co-hosts. I'm Brian.
And I'm Robin Joy.
And this is Coach's Corner.
Hi, everybody. Next in our series of a topic, a tip, and a term for new Amazon sellers, we're going to talk today about testing ASINs. What does that mean? What is that?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You keep saying it, but I don't quite get what you're saying.
We hear it all the time, like, oh, it's worth a test. It's just a test. You should test that. I would test that.
But what do we mean by that when we say that?
And why?
And why?
Yeah.
Right. What are we trying to accomplish with a test?
Right. Well, exactly. What are we trying to accomplish with a test?
Yeah.
So let's start with the definition from the Oxford English Dictionary about what a test means.
Ooh, fancy.
OED.
The OED.
So according to the OED, the test is, quote, a procedure intended to establish the quality, performance, or reliability of something, especially before it is taken into widespread use.
Sounds like test small to me.
It does sound like test small. Yeah, that's the other thing. We hear test it, I'd test it, test small.
Yeah.
We hear that a lot.
All right.
So we are trying to get a sense of what's going to happen before we make a bigger commitment, basically.
That's right. Because there is some level of risk, even though it's very low in the replan strategy, there is some level of risk every time. You don't want to increase that risk until you know what you're dealing with, right? Yeah. We can look at the history, and Keepa gives us a lot of information if we want to dig into it. But it's historical information, and it's kind of like looking at a stock chart. There are no guarantees that that's going to happen in the future. What we have to gather is some experience in looking at what we have evidence of in the past, which is not the only thing that's happened in the past, and see if we can't put together some things that work best in our favor. So when we test, we're testing the ones that have, a best chance of either getting us profit or at least getting all our money back. Right.
So let's talk about some other things that you test.
Okay.
And because I think there's two different kinds of tests. So when people think test, I want to be clear that when somebody says, yeah, you should test that, it doesn't mean like you should sit down and take an exam.
Right.
And by you sending in the products and the results that you get back determine whether you are proficient or have the knowledge or not. Right.
Right. That's not what we're
more.
testing.
Yeah. That's more like in the academic world, or even if you're going to get your driver's license or something like that, right? But I think
you have an exam. You take an exam.
An exam, right? Yeah. I think of it more as when I was coming up with this morning, not to paint too clear of a picture, but when you're getting in the shower, right? Especially if it's a place that's relatively new to you, you're putting your hand in there to test the temperature before you get in, right?
Like if you're in a hotel or something.
You don't just doody-doo, pop in there and you're like, and it's too hot or it's too cold. Or
it's too cold. Sometimes that can be worse, but you don't want to get burned. But yeah, you got to test that.
You're testing it.
You reach in a little bit and see how it feels on your hand before you put your whole body in there.
Right.
You do the same thing like when you're jumping into a swimming pool, right?
Yeah.
You stick your toe in there and see, okay, it's a heated pool, but how warm is that really?
Unless you're some of our crazy friends who they don't care. They just jump in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not that brave usually.
No,
yeah.
I mean,
when I was younger.
I mean, it's not like you're going to change the temperature of the ocean or anything like that. So, or a big lake.
Right.
It's easier to just jump in those. But in a pool, you have certain expectations and you don't want to be surprised.
Yes.
Right.
You want to, gear yourself up for what might be coming, right?
Another place where I think a test is applicable here to make it more apples to apples is like for drug trials or drug treatments or something like that, clinical trials where they have some level of expected outcome and they're putting it into places, they're implementing it to see if that comes true.
They're testing their theory to see if that is actually what manifests.
Right. So testing it in a lab, though, is a little bit different. Maybe a third way of thinking about it. Like, I think you do have some level of expectation, but it's more of a rudimentary. Like, let's see what happens. I think these things are going to happen when we combine this and this, right? And then you fine tune that maybe into some real, like a drug or some other type of treatment, which again we're not really doing an experiment with this.
Not in that sense, I guess.
Yeah.
So what are we doing, Brian?
We're doing the putting our hand in the shower to test the temperature.
It's like a trial.
It's a trial.
We're going to try this and see how it works for us. We have evidence that tells us what we think is going to happen or a minimum of what we think is going to happen.
Yeah.
So we want to test it, make sure that's going to happen for us.
Right.
See if that's reality or if it's just if we didn't have enough information, which is almost always the case. We don't have enough information to know whether this is going to be replenishable until we actually test.
Well, let's go back to the definition there, because there's the last part of it I thought was the most impactful to what we do.
Yeah.
And then I think we can unpack that a little bit, and then also unpack why we actually test and why, like, you can talk about what you do in the boot camp and why you're going through that cycle just one time here.
Sure.
But at the end of the definition, it says, especially before it is taken into widespread use.
Yes.
Okay. So this, to me, in our application says test small.
Yeah.
Right. We are testing small. We're not testing with 20 units, although I guess small is relative, right? I mean, if you've got a business where you're normally sending in thousands of units, maybe 20 units is a reasonable test for you.
Sure. And that you've got a different tolerance level at that time.
Exactly.
We're talking to new sellers in this series. So adjust that according to your experience for sure. But yeah, with new sellers, we recommend, testing only, 3 or 4, 5.
Yeah. We would
Maybe
say,
even 2.
I say 3 to 5 normally, but yeah. So depending on the cost, some people may test 2.
Sure.
Trying to keep your cost balance across your ASINs as well. So if you're putting 80% in 3 tests, 80% of your capital,
Yeah. Well, or 80% of your capital in one test would be even worse.
That's what I was talking. That's what I was trying to say.
You have 3 tests and 80% is going into one.
I was trying to get to the quantity of the units. If you're putting 80% all in one ASIN, then that's not necessarily so we like to keep that as diversified as we can, right?
Right. So we can protect ourselves a little bit while we're testing.
So as a newer seller, if I'm doing a test and I find myself buying 20 units, what sort of internal talk should I have going on there? Well,
the internal talk that you have if you're a new seller, let's say you have fewer than 50 replenishable ASINs in your book of business. Okay. So in that case, if you're sending 20 in on as a test in your first shipment on this ASIN, I say that's too many, because if it doesn't do what you expected it to do, if things change, then, the history doesn't matter. We got to deal with reality here. I would rather run out, test small, and then go send some more in than have 20 in there. It doesn't go well, and I have to recall all 20 of them or lose money on all 20 of them.
Well, we hear a lot from the people that we're coaching with, from the folks in the boot camp, moderating posts on the Facebook group. We see a lot of these kind of newer seller interactions.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times I've seen by the time it got to the fulfillment center, the ASIN had tanked. Right? This happens no matter.
Sure.
I mean, there are ways to make that happen less frequently, but it happens. It still happens to the best of us, right?
Sure, absolutely.
So
you can't get it to sell it for higher. So I'm sure glad I only tested with 3 of those instead of 20.
That's what I was going to say is you said like circumstances can change, and they do. So that's one great reason not to test with a quantity that you're going to be disappointed in if it doesn't go the direction that you want it to.
How many of us had just sent in consumable multi-packs and then they changed the rules and we said, oh, shoot. I got to pull some of those. I have to pull those back. If those were 20 unit tests and we hadn't even tested the ASIN yet, we'd have to be calling it all back, right?
So reasons that we test, I think, is kind of what we're getting into now.
Okay.
Right? The circumstances change around a listing, and all of a sudden it doesn't seem like you can sell it for what you thought. And you don't know necessarily, like it's an unprecedented event, so you don't necessarily know how long you might have to wait this out. So way better position to be 3 to 5 units as opposed to 20 units.
Yes. So test it, make sure it's gonna happen for you. Also, we seriously don't have any proof from history. That only gives us evidence to help us make our decision. So don't get tied down in what it's done or what people have. I hear people saying all the time what it's selling for. These are the price history in Keepa is not a sales history. We don't know if it sold at that or not. We don't know how many sold. We don't know which person got a sale. We know that these sellers were priced at this price on that day, sometime on that day when Amazon went to check it out. So
when Keepa went to check it out.
Or when Keepa went to check it out, excuse me, yes.
Well, another circumstance that can change is you realize that you sent in the wrong size, flavor, color variation.
Yes. And this happens to new sellers. It is not unusual for this to happen to new sellers. That's why we really, really stress doing a one-time cycle first, which is what is covered in the Kickstart Bootcamp you alluded to earlier. Let's just explain real quick what that is. So that is a program that is in the Silent Gym community. It's called a Kickstart Bootcamp, and it's a 4-week class that helps you get your account, your seller account open, helps get your Keepa account open, which is the only tool that we really think that you need to get started. Helps you go and find one ASIN that you can sell, one unit of one ASIN. Just go through that process one time. Bring it back. We'll show you how to prep it, put it in a shipping plan, and send it to Amazon's FBA warehouse and let them know it's coming. Then we set you up with information about doing that over and over and over in your business. Okay, so that's what it is. It also has 4 live Zoom calls with the coach, which is usually me, in the Kickstart, where you can ask questions out loud, right? Okay, so all those materials are there. That's what it is. You can find more information at silentjimdotcom/Kickstart. Okay, so now we are understanding what we're talking about and where some of this information is coming from. I have some stories about some things that happen to new sellers because that have happened in the Kickstart. I've had people with that exact situation you have. So I said, don't overthink it. Let's just get one sent in and go through this process one time.
Because how do you learn?
You go through the process.
Iterations.
Iterations, right. So the first one is 1, okay? I really like the idea of 1 because you're not going to plan on making any money on it. You probably, use that up in shipping to ship it in, but the experience is what you're paying for. So if you buy a $10 item, it costs you $10, you send it in and you sell it, and it takes up $10 to do that, you break even. Great. You've gotten a lot of information for free right there, a lot of experience just by going through the process one time. Why one time, though? I get some pushback, well, if I'm going to send a shipment in, I want to send 20 different ASINs in, and I want to send at least 20 items, 50 items. I want to send a box full. Yeah, right.
Can I talk about that?
Yes, you can.
Just because I was working with another coaching client recently who had I love the energy around this. This is awesome. If I could just scoop out a tablespoon of what he's got going on and distribute that to other people, we'd have a lot more people being successful.
Oh, yeah.
But he was sending in, 1 week he sent in 46 tests. The next week he sent in 38 tests. And then he was sending all these huge numbers of tests, which again,
is great.
If your tolerance level, if your risk level accepts that, or, that works for you, go for it. And I think it works for him. But the one thing I always like to caution people on around that is if there is some systemic problem in your sourcing process, I'd hate to have 70, 100, or 150 tests out there that all are wrong.
Right. So in my sourcing process, in my shipping process, in my prepping process.
Yeah. That's why we like to say chunk it down much smaller and go through the iterations. You learn each iteration. Every week you're learning and getting better at this process as opposed to trying to cram it all into 4 weeks to get this thing solved once and for all. I think more like 6 to 12 months is when you're going to get it to that level.
Exactly. That's coming, but maybe not the first shipment.
Yeah.
And to be clear, that's usually not the issue that we have.
Yeah, that's usually
getting people to send that first shipment. Yeah. That's a big kind of a mountain that we try to make into a molehill, as Jim says in the Kickstart. But some of the things
molehill into a mountain.
No, we're trying to make the mountain into a molehill.
With the Kickstart, gotcha.
With the Kickstart, right. So some of the things that come up because people try to get ahead of themselves. I've seen several times when people say, oh, I sent in this shipment. I sent, 20 units, maybe of 3 or 4 different ASINs, whatever numbers are, 20 units. And I realized that I had put the wrong stickers on them. I didn't understand. I printed out my stickers and here they still are. I didn't get my stickers on them. Okay. Things like that happen because you've never done this before. You don't have a process down. You don't know what you don't know. People are surprised when they realize they don't know how to make a shipping plan. this is not something that you just grow up knowing how to do. This is a specific Amazon policy a program that changes all the time. So it's not like you just wake up one day and that's just easy to do. Now, I'm not saying you're not a smart person. You can't learn these things. Absolutely. Everybody who I've worked with has been able to learn this as far as I know so far. But it takes going through it one time to know what your questions are. Many times I get the question, well, I can't figure out how to get past this prepping issue. I can't figure out how to get my labels printed. These are the things that you have to get down before you put a whole bunch in there, okay? Some of the other things that I've had just recently, and it's not the first time I've heard of this happening, they got their shipment already, had about 20 units in the box, really excited, really proud of themselves, and I was too. Then they printed off the labels, the UPS labels and the FBA label, put it in their box and taped it up and took it straight to the U.S. Post Office. Didn't notice that they had dropped it off, put it in the box for new packages, came home, and the next day got up and said, I was supposed to drop that off at UPS, wasn't I? Yeah. So went back to the post office and was like, can I get that back? Nah, it's gone. It's gone.
I don't know how it got out. Someone took it home with them is probably
and I've heard of this happening before. And I do know that many times the post office and UPS get each other's mail, and they tend to get it to each other.
They're friendly.
But they're not in any hurry about it.
Sure.
I mean, why would the post office be in any hurry to get this package to UPS? They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They'll get it, the next time UPS comes by, they'll give it to them or something like that. So it'll be okay. But these little things, boy, I bet you wish you didn't have 20 units in there and had been just that one. So I'll bet that person never makes this mistake again.
That's right.
Though there's a really great way to learn a lesson.
I'm reminded of another good reason to test small initially is that we were pretty excited about this paper plate pyramid we had at one point in time. At least I was, because I thought, oh, look at this! Like every time we sell this, it's like $9 a profit or something like that. And it was true. Even after inbound transportation, all the good stuff, it was a pretty profitable ASIN. But it was a major pain in the you-know-what to prep and ship.
Yeah.
Like we had stacked 4 things on top of each other and it went to a pyramid, and then there was no poly bag big enough. No. So you had to stretch wrap it yourself and then you tape it down, do all this, and you put it, and only one fits in a medium Home Depot box. And it's not super efficient to send. And so it was, maybe 2 fit in there. I might be exaggerating a little bit. But the point is, all of a sudden, we were like, oh, gosh, maybe we should have. And we did eventually scale that one down and eventually phase it out.
Yeah.
But we were like, oh, yeah, it'd be great if I could sell. And we did sell that 2 or 3 times a month. It was, pretty awesome little listing for the time. And then we found something better. Right.
Yeah. And that's what happens. You'll take what comes to you. It won't be the best. In your testing, you'll find, oh, this is a pain. I'm going to replace this when I can. And then you'll keep sending it in, probably if it's making you money, until you can replace it with something better.
I think the point I'm trying to make there is that the test is not just for what the results are going to be from Amazon. The test is for your process too, right? To see how it's going to go through your process of prep and ship, whether that's you, whether that's someone who's working for you. There's a whole lot that goes into that besides just the feedback that you're going to get from Amazon.
Yeah. One more thing that I think of happens in Kickstart rather often, actually. We talk about the fact that we really need to be focused on the brand in the brand field to make sure it's a correct brand and expelled correctly. If it is it is generic in the brand field, you will get an error when you go to put that in your catalog, and you won't be able to bypass that error. You won't be able to get on that ASIN, no matter what your tools say you're approved for, what Amazon says you're approved for. It won't let you put it in your inventory. So what happens is, people don't have their process down, so they will go and they'll say, oh, here's one. I'm going to go buy it, bring it back, and then put it in their catalog. And they realize that they can't, and they've just wasted their money, or they have to take that back.
Yeah.
So these are the things that through the process of testing, it's not just the testing, like you say, at Amazon, although it'll get to be that. When you're brand new, it's a lot of testing. Do I have the materials I have? Where am I going to do this in my home?
Yep.
What kind of, lead time am I looking at? When do things happen? These are things that you're testing for in the beginning. And it will calm down once you get some of those basics out of the way to where you're just testing ASINs and you have a process for it and you go step by step by step and it goes along with your replenishable items.
Yep. The other thing that can happen, circumstances change, is the listing can get modified.
It can.
Even like
it's not supposed to.
After I know it's not supposed to, but it happens. After you have it added to your inventory, the inventory is on the way or even active on the listing. And if that thing got changed and you know the brand got if something happened to it where you don't want to be on it because it could be a violation of some sort against your account health, then you want to close that listing and recall. Way easier to recall 1 or 2 units or destroy than it is to do 15 or 20.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's some of the reasons that we test.
Yeah.
That's some of what we're trying to get out of a test. Mm-hmm. What is our tip for today?
Well, I think we haven't finished talking about some of the benefits of testing.
Oh, let's talk about the benefits of
all
testing.
The reasons that you should do it. And then there are, just to avoid some of those challenges, but there are some actual benefits that you get from selling those tests, regardless of how many it is.
Yeah, regardless of how many it is, and regardless of whether or not you are going to be able to replenish that item or not.
Sure.
Whether or not it tested out for you.
Right.
You get a lot of benefits just for the test.
And the first one is successful transactions, which is what Amazon is looking to you for before they ungate you in a lot of cool things that you want to be in. And by the way, some of the examples that you talked about in the Kickstart program are classic examples of why Amazon doesn't say for every new seller, yes, have full access to our entire catalog, right?
They're really kind of saying, hey, why don't you try it a few times? Let's make sure you got this down, and then we'll start opening this up for you. That's building trust with Amazon.
Building trust with Amazon. Successful transactions. Yep.
Now, Amazon doesn't know whether you made any money or not.
No, they don't care. What they care about is their customers are happy.
That's not their motivation. They care about happy customers. And for them to care about happy customers and bring those to us benefits us. We care whether we make money or not, but they don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So successful transactions will also improve your account health rating.
Yes.
In fact, Amazon actually defines exactly how many points you can get. Everyone starts with a 200 account health rating when you're new. Any compliance issues go against that, and you can lose points.
Not all compliance issues. It tells you very clearly whether it's impacting your account health score or not.
Right. Some things can make you lose points, but clearly you can gain points by making successful transactions. And Amazon says at this point, 200 sales within 6 months, rolling within the last 6 months, gets you 4 account health points. So 400 gets you 8 points. 600 gets you, 12 points.
It's 400 transactions? Or
200 transactions get you 4 points.
Okay,
I did say it wrong, didn't I?
I thought you said 400. So
200 transaction.
Okay. In a 6 month period, get you 4 points.
Right.
And this is rolling.
Yeah, it's rolling. So it's 6 months from today, or from the time that they. Yeah.
Today's the 180th day or 180th day, right? And going back 180 days. So a lot of times we'll hear people say, well, nothing has happened to my account, but my score dropped.
Yep. And your sales probably dropped.
And it's usually related, unless you've got some compliance issues in there, policy violations, it's usually related to a slight dip in sales.
Yes.
So what's going to happen is everyone's account health score is likely going to go up if you're an active seller during Q4, because you're going to at least maintain, if not sell more items.
If you keep sending those shipments in there, if you have stock, yes.
What's going to happen is in January, February, when the Q4 rush is over and sort of sales go back to normal, then you may see your account health score dip. So be prepared for that. Right.
So be prepared for that. That's true. And we did hear some feedback about that last year when that happened. This also is a case when, I didn't get a shipment out last week. Well, then your sales are going to dip because you have a gap in the inventory you sent in, but also know that your account health rating could gap depending on how much tolerance you had there. Okay, so successful transactions is what we're looking for. In effect, sales to happy customers.
Happy customers, the ones who don't get refunds and the ones who don't complain.
Right.
Now, I keep saying account health score, but it's really account health rating. AHR, right? You're also going to get the opportunity for seller feedback.
Yes. You cannot give me feedback as the seller that you purchased from unless you purchase from me. So I can't get seller feedback until I sell something to someone.
You know, I think that's 100% true. But how many times have we gotten feedback just trying to read between the lines about product that we didn't sell? It's like, I ordered a size 44 and it came out at 42. We don't sell clothes. Like, I don't even know why we got the feedback.
I'm sure it was an accident. The person responded on the wrong. That will happen.
Yeah.
But we do want good seller feedback to help our seller manage.
And I mean, a lot of those that we've gotten have been good, not bad.
Right.
Hey, thanks for the great blazer, or thanks for the great pair of shoes. And we don't sell either of those things. Right.
Right. So that's happened a couple of times, but usually it's legitimate stuff. But what happens is once you have good seller feedback, Amazon shows that to the customer, your percentage of good seller feedback.
Yep.
Until you get one, it just says new seller.
Or just launched.
Yeah. Or I think it says new seller now. I looked it up yesterday.
Okay.
They might have changed that. Anyway, the point is, the minute you get one seller feedback is when that changes. So that's something that you cannot get if you don't test. So these are things that you kind of are building in your foundation before you ever worry about making money or anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, what other benefits do we
get? Just say, let's be clear what seller feedback is. Seller feedback is not a product review.
Right.
So seller feedback is the customer's experience dealing with you as the seller, not about the product. So if they didn't like the product, they thought the product was not priced correctly, if they thought the product didn't meet their needs for whatever reason, they didn't like the flavor of it, it didn't fit right, whatever, those are product reviews. And if you get any of those on your seller feedback, you can usually get them scrubbed off.
Right.
Okay.
Also note that seller feedback usually does have to do with how well you packaged the item, with how, make sure that you paid attention to your expiration dates if you have them, making sure that the packaging was appropriate. I mean, what do we get? Some flour.
So 2 things we just got this weekend, actually. One was a sack of flour, a 5-pound sack of flour that you ordered from Amazon Fresh, which is they don't usually mail it, but they did, and they put it inside of a paper envelope. And so by the time we got it, the sack of flour had been dropped and thrown and all
burst inside
and torn inside the bag, and the flour was all over inside the bag. This is what Amazon does, unfortunately, and it's not intentional. It's just that sometimes they got people working there who don't use their head very well.
Well, or, for whatever reason, it's not their responsibility. It's our responsibility as sellers.
Well, in this case, it was an Amazon product. It was an Amazon Fresh product shipped by Amazon Fresh.
Well, you're not helping me make my point.
I know, but, yeah. But I get your point.
The point is, as a seller, if you did not package it according to a way that would get all the way to the customer, to Amazon's warehouse, and then to the customer without...
Yeah, and the second thing I was going to talk about to make your point was we ordered a book, a hardcover book.
Yes.
Right, and had the dust cover on it. And we got it, and the dust cover was torn. It's new, a new book. We got it, and the dust cover was torn because
of the way it was packaged in a box.
Well, and it wasn't packaged at all, actually, right? They just had the book with no poly bag on it or anything, and it was just thrown in a box, and it got all torn up. And then actually we took it out, and on the back was a bargain bin sticker, $2.99 for this book that, what did we pay, $20 for it or whatever, right?
Right.
And we're like, oh, we should have gone to Barnes & Noble. But, it was a convenience purchase, right?
Right. I didn't care
want to
about
go to Barnes & Noble.
But boy, I don't want to send something to the customer that has a sticker on it
for way less than what I paid.
These are all things that you get experience in from testing, from testing your process, from testing your ASINs, from testing the whole process, from purchasing to putting in your inventory to prepping to shipping. All these things are important. Another thing that seller feedback is, speaking of testing, is they will tell you in your seller feedback if you sent them the wrong item.
Yes.
So if you pack it up and you ship it in to Amazon under a certain ASIN, it better be that thing, because a customer will buy it and they will not only give you poor feedback, but Amazon might, take you off of that listing.
Sure. Yeah, that can happen. That happened to us one time.
Yeah. We've told that story before. But yeah, I mean, we were new, and that's what happens when you're new. So let yourself be new. Let yourself learn these things. You don't have to outsmart everybody on your first day. None of us still we're learning things all the time. Once you get past having to be the best at it, already know everything before you try anything, then you can start.
Well, I think one of the things is the terms change frequently. And so we have to keep up with them.
True.
So what, was the case last month may not be the case this month. We just hope we don't get surprised by it. Like there's plenty of time in the announcement and all that good stuff. Okay. The other thing you can get with successful transactions is an increase in your IPI score.
Yes.
Right. Your inventory performance index. Again, it's not it is a score, but it's an index. This means it's like they're tracking your sell through, what your stale inventory looks like, storage space in use, that kind of stuff.
And this can give you the ability, especially in Q4 and peak seasons, to have more shelf space available to you at FBA warehouses.
Yes.
So keeping the IPI scores is important. If you want to really make a business out of this, you're going to need shelf space. And Amazon does limit storage space. I mean, they don't
especially
have unlimited.
Especially during Q4.
Right. When you're new, it'll feel like unlimited.
Yeah.
But there'll come a point, if you keep going, those limits are concerning. And you want to be able to send in Q4, especially once you get a little bit of experience.
Well, and experience is the last thing we were talking about. Why are we doing these tests and why are we testing small? We get better at our skill by repetition or iterations. And so relish the experience that you get by doing your things weekly, sourcing, shopping, shipping, prepping, shipping, all the things in the 7 core competencies, right? Pricing,
replenishing.
But get that experience.
Yes.
The experience is the most important, in my opinion, the most important reason that you would do that test and test small is for the experience.
Absolutely. And so don't act like you already know all the experience in this ASIN because if you haven't done it before, you don't have the experience. What's going to happen is as you test more and more ASINs is you're going to start recognizing what happens to an ASIN. What kinds of ASINs does this happen to? What are the differences between ASINs? And you start to really put that together, those things that you can't they really are experience. You can't, just put those in someone's head because you kind of have a feel for it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay,
I think we have drilled that one quite a bit. I'm going to skip over some things that I think we've already chatted about and get to the tip. You got a tip for us this week.
Yeah, my tip is don't get bogged down in this process. Get your process down. Don't try to put everything in your test, okay? Or in your sourcing. I have people who create these elaborate spreadsheets, and they're beautiful, and they do really cool things. And every time they look at an ASIN, they want to have 32 different data points about this ASIN, including, the date, the price it was 30 days ago, the average 30-day price, the price it is right now, the buy box, the FBA, like all the information you can get from Keepa. And then what happens is they get bogged down. Then it takes them 20 minutes to look at one ASIN.
Yep.
By the time they get through an hour, what have they looked at? 3 or 4 ASINs.
Yep. And
they haven't gotten anywhere, and they're feeling pretty frustrated. Then they just don't get anything done. They don't keep any records because they just stop doing it altogether. The point is, don't let yourself get bogged down. Take this one baby step at a time. Get a process down for each things. Put them together, and then have that down and move on to the next step. Don't try to do everything at once.
I think that's a great tip, because last week we were talking about, or on a previous episode, we were talking about the amount of energy consumed in the artificial intelligence space to go from 85% to 95%. It's 100 times more energy to get that 10% increase in accuracy. Same thing with us when we're sourcing. Like, yes, we could go and collect every single data point on that ASIN, but the reality is it's not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze most of the time.
What did you say? The juice isn't worth the squeeze.
The juice is not worth the squeeze. Yes.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you are spending that much more time and effort to gather these data points that really don't matter.
Yes.
Right. Which is one of the reasons we came up with the framework of the 3-step check.
Yes. 3
primary points, the most important data points you need to know in order to pull the trigger.
Right.
That's it.
Get the test in.
Yes.
Then go study what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Then build your experience through
All
that.
those other data points are way more meaningful once you are active in the listing.
Exactly.
It's not that meaningful. They're just data points if you're just collecting them when you're not there.
Right. Historical data points.
Historical data points, yeah.
So another thing that I think in this conversation should be made is to be clear on what you're going to do with the test results. Now, we talked about the benefits of testing. Mm-hmm. That happens for your tests, whether you keep record of it or not. So let that be what it is. What am I testing for? I'm testing to see whether I want to replenish this item or not. Be clear on what you're testing for, and don't, again, try to make 32 things happen in this test. Mm-hmm. You're testing for one thing. Should I replenish or should I not? Do I just get my money back and don't make any profit on it because it didn't work out? Or did it work out and I know what price I can sell it at? Now I'm going to replenish it with some more inventory.
And I like to say, don't necessarily consider it a failure if it's not a replenishment, if it doesn't become replenishable for you, because of all the things, for all the reasons we were talking about above, the successful transactions, the
all
account
of those
health
benefits,
rating, the IPI, all the seller feedback, ungating, all that good stuff works in your favor.
Yeah.
And then keep a record of what you have tested and what the results were.
Yeah.
And so this is usually a very simple worksheet that you can set up in Google Sheets or in Excel that tracks every ASIN, when it became available, when you repriced it, and when it sold and what it sold for. That's it. And actually, you technically don't even need to, I use the spreadsheet or the worksheet as a trigger for me, but the historical records, maybe not the repricing changes, but at least the sales numbers are always available for me from Amazon or from Inventory Lab or from Seller Board, right? There's multiple places I can get the historical data. So it's not like I need to
manually
build my own
create that data, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And how many times have we had people come to us and say, oh, yeah, I had some that were in there and they sold, but I can't remember. I forgot to go replenish them, or I can't remember what it sold for. Just make sure you have the results and whether you're going to replenish it or not. Even if it's a yes or no replenish and maybe a price, then just make sure that you keep what you need for the test and only what you need for that test. Okay.
And then don't rely on anecdotal information or your feelings. I think we're trying to make data-driven decisions.
Yes.
Not, I don't like it because, right? Yeah. I don't like it because it's a pyramid of paper plates.
Yeah, I didn't like it either, but I did it until I got something that would replace all of that profit. Yeah, for sure. And the other thing is I get a lot of that is, it seems like it's been there forever and it's not sold yet. I sent it in 6 weeks ago and we go and look and it's not available yet.
Oh my gosh.
Especially in Q4, you'll see that. But it seems like a long time because it was 7 weeks ago that you found it. And then you had to go buy it and prep it and ship it into Amazon. There's 3 weeks or so. Then it's another week to get to Amazon. Then Amazon might take another week to put it to another warehouse, and then they have to receive it. And you may be 5 or 6 weeks before you see this even be available within the Prime window to the customer. So don't get too excited. Make sure you temper your concerns about how long it takes, because those first few, that's all you have to look at while you're filling that pipeline, are going to feel like long. That's normal. Yeah. That's normal.
Okay. The term we had for this week, we actually already covered it. The term is the account health rating, or AHR.
Let's talk about exactly what that is.
Okay. So.
Oh, I did explain.
You did.
Account health rating, and I explained how everyone starts at 200, and you get an additional four points for every 200 successful transactions within 6 months.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's just do the math on that. 200 transactions.
We don't do math. You know better than that.
That's like not very many units a week, right? If there were 26 weeks in 6 months and you were doing 20 units a week in sales, that would be 520 units. So 520 units, yeah, it's not that much.
So if you sold 520 items in that 6 months,
yeah, then you'd be at 208. You'd have 4 points times 2, right?
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
And almost the next level. Anyway, the point is that's good perspective. That's not that many sales. It's not 200 this week.
Right.
It's 200 over 6 months. So get your inventory in there so you have things in that pipeline to sell over the next 6 months.
Now, can your account health rating be impacted by things other than how many successful transactions you have?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Your account health rating can also be affected by your FBM customer service performance. Okay. Customer service is included in the FBA fee when you use FBA in Amazon's warehouses. So you don't have to worry about customer service there. But in FBM, that's on you, the customer, unless you have added Amazon's customer service to FBM. So that can impact your account health score.
Account health rating.
Account health rating. I gotta get the right term.
If you have any policy compliance issues,
yes,
like I mentioned earlier, not all of them, they'll state very clearly does not impact your account health rating, but there are many that do. And so you want to make sure you don't have any policy violations.
Right. And shipping performance for
inbound?
FBM.
No, just FBM.
Not
okay.
Inbound.
Okay.
For FBM.
Yeah.
So if you're shipping, if you're fulfilling yourself, then Amazon has no tolerance, virtually no tolerance for a late shipment. You get very little room there before you get your account at risk. That's why if you're doing FBM and you haven't done it before, there are several places you can step in it. Make sure you at least review the course in the Proven Amazon course. I recommend getting somebody who's done it before to help you set up your shipping templates, your listings. There's several pointers that someone who's done it before can give you. And again, there's no tolerance in your account health rating for having late shipments.
When you're new. You got
even
no
when
cushion.
You're new. Yeah. Okay. So we've covered a topic, which was testing. Why? What is testing and why do we do it?
Yep.
We've covered a tip. What was our tip?
Don't get bogged down.
Don't get bogged down in the process. And we've covered our term, which was account health rating.
Yes, account health rating.
All right. Do you have a quote for us today?
I do have a quote for us today. Actually, this quote came to me last night from Tim Good.
Yes. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you so much, Tim, for he sent me an email saying, I know you guys like to do quotes. And so here's one that really resonated with me. I love this. And by the way, if you have quotes that you would love for us to send to talk about on the show, we would love to get them from you. But this quote is from Warren Buffett, and it goes like this. Degree of difficulty counts in the Olympics. It does not count in business. You don't get any extra points for the fact that something is very hard to do.
This really helps us remember. We tend to associate difficulty with status. So if it's really difficult and we can overcome that and we are showing, that we can do things that other people can't do, then, we feel good about that. But you don't get any extra money for that.
You don't. In fact, I think a lot of times you'll hear people, we've said it before, complexity makes you sound smart. Simplicity makes you money.
Yeah.
And what we talk about with the replens business is that it's super simple. Super simple. Not easy, but very simple to do. We do not have to overcomplicate it, though. We don't have to overcomplicate it by getting bogged down in the 42,000 data points that exist on an ASIN that I need to know before I'm going to pull the trigger on something, right?
Let it be straightforward.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard enough.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult enough to overcome the barriers. So let it be straightforward at least.
Yep.
And I think it can be a very straightforward process.
Agreed. All right. Well, when it's not straightforward for you on some of your ASINs that all of a sudden went sideways, it solves that problem.
Just go test some more ASINs.
Test some more ASINs.
Test more ASINs.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Hey, before we let you go, we have a special segment that we do here once per week with our good friend Jeff Schick from jeffschick.com. He is a legal and policy expert for all things Amazon, Walmart, and e-commerce, and we're excited to have him back on the show. Jeff, thanks so much for being here. And what do you have for us today?
All right. Well, thanks for having me. And today we're going to talk about transparency. So a lot of people wonder what transparency is. It's kind of a buzzword. If you're a private label seller, you probably already know, because I encourage most of our private label clients to enroll in the program. But if you're an arbitrage seller, your first experience with transparency will likely come about when you're going to send a product to Amazon or ship it to a customer and you're asked for a transparency code. So what sellers need to know about transparency enabled listings is that if you're sending products to Amazon, FBA, and it's transparency enabled, you do have to have 5 products with unique transparency codes in order to send those products into FBA. So what that means is if you are at, a store, like let's say you're sourcing at Home Depot and you pick up a grill cleaner and you notice on the grill cleaner that there's this little sticker that has it's got like a blue T, stylized blue T on it. And it says, scan me with your transparency app next to the barcode. That indicates that that product is transparency enabled. Now, it doesn't mean you can't sell it on Amazon, but it would mean that you'd have to buy 5 of them, because in order to send those products to FBA, you've got to scan 5 unique barcodes, because each one of those QR codes is a different serial number. So you have to scan all 5 of them, and that would allow you to then send the product into FBA. If you don't have 5 and you send it into FBA, that's when you'll get hit with a transparency violation, and they'll come back and say, you sent us products, you need to provide at least 5 serial numbers in order to unlock them. So highly recommend doing it. If just as a word of advice for sellers, if you're sending in shipments to FBA and you notice a transparency sticker on the product, take that out of your shipment if you're using any sort of like inventory labs or 2D workflow or scan power or anything like that. Take it out of your shipment from there and create its own shipment plan through a send to FBA. The reason is that on the API for the shipping partner API, Amazon does not integrate with transparency right now. It's been like a common pain point for people. So it will not flag that as needing to be unlocked before sending to FBA. It will just allow you to create a shipping plan to FBA. Then what will happen is Amazon will receive the units and immediately put them into their held inventory pot, like bin or whatever, where they're going to then send you a notice and say, you sent these products in without validating them through transparency in advance. You must provide all of your invoices to prove that they're authentic, even though they can scan the stickers that are on the products. And it turns into a huge ordeal, and it's an account health violation that you have to clear, or else they'll throw the units away. So my recommendation is when sending those to FBA, take them out of your workflow and send them in using send to FBA, because then you can make sure that you've done all that, basically pre-scanning in advance. And so you'll just have a separate shipment of those. They'll get them, they'll scan them, they'll sell them, and you're good to go.
Awesome. So you're recommending then, instead of sending anything through one of the third-party shipment softwares, just go into Seller Central and create the shipment for itself for that particular
If it's a transparency item, yes.
Okay, perfect. So I didn't know if you were saying they could create a separate shipment in like Inventory Lab or Scan Power just for that item. So always.
All right, no, you got that right. Yeah, no. So you want to make it in Seller Central for that transparency item.
Perfect. Now, so that's for FBA. What about some of the differences between FBA and FBM with transparency codes?
So FBM's a little bit different. They don't require 5 labels, or at least historically, they've not required 5 labels for FBM. But similar to the FBA issue, if you're using the shipping partner API for like ShipStation or any of those software that create shipping labels when you're selling stuff, they don't integrate with the transparency checker. So what happens is if you send a product to a customer through ShipStation, it will not prompt you to put in a serial number. It will just generate a shipping label and it will mark it as shipped in Amazon. And then about a day later, you'll get an email from Amazon's transparency violations team saying, you sent a product to a customer without scanning the transparency label in advance. You must provide us with invoices to prove authenticity, and we're not going to pay you for this item. So it becomes a pretty big ordeal, and you can lose a lot of money that way because you don't get paid for having not scanned the item when you shipped it out. So when it comes to the FBM, again, I recommend going through Seller Central, buying shipping through Amazon, scanning those barcodes, the QR codes when you're creating the shipment, and then you're all good to go, because it'll send it out and you're good. So.
Now, what is your recommendation then? Because I get this question a lot for whenever somebody is buying a product from a legitimate distributor, even if it's arbitrage, you're buying it from Walmart. You know, this product is authentic, but it doesn't have a transparency code. Why is that? Since all of the items are supposed to have transparency codes, and what can a seller do, if anything?
So that would be an example of a manufacturer that is violating Amazon's transparency guidelines. So, when manufacturers enroll in the programs, one of the terms of the transparency program, one of the terms of service is that they have to agree to label all of the items that they sell in all sales channels with transparency codes. Unfortunately, that violation is between a manufacturer and Amazon. So a seller doesn't really have standing to bring a violation. Like, they can point it out to Amazon. You can send it in, say, hey, Amazon, this is going on, but there's really not much more you can do. And so if you bought items like, let's go back to the hypothetical grill cleaner at Home Depot. If it says that it requires a transparency code and the one that you bought at Home Depot doesn't have that transparency code, then unfortunately, you can point that out to Amazon. Like, you could take pictures of it, you could open a case, but beyond that, there's not anything you could do. And you certainly would not want to send in that product to Amazon and think that you're going to prove a point, because you won't. You'll just get a transparency violation on your account. So I would say, it's probably better just to move on and find other products. If you really feel like it's worth your time to lodge a complaint, then sure, go ahead and do it. Provide them with the photos and the evidence. But other than that, don't expect that it will be a fast process, and certainly don't try to send it in and think that you'll prove a point that way, because you won't.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for this information on transparency codes. I know that I get a lot of questions on it, so I'm glad that we got your advice for all of this. And I'm excited to see you next week, Jeff. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.